Welcome back to the channel. We have been doing a lot of harvesting and I wasn't sure if I was going to do a video on this, but if you don't harvest the garden, then what's the point? So these are our pear trees. This is the first year that they have produced anything, so we're so excited about that. But here in September, the bugs and birds were starting to get into them, and some of them were getting rotten. They weren't really soft yet though, so we didn't know what to do, but picked the ones that we could and brought them inside and let them kind of ripen a little bit more, and I was able to make some peach preserves, and I dehydrated some of them too. So glad we got some pears this year. Then end of September, like the bugs just went crazy. We had pest problems all over. The slugs were crazy this year. So this was a new patch of bok choy and they just like were devouring it. So I was trying to scoop them out and get them all out of this garden space, and I put down my Sluggo Plus after this to try to get a handle on all these slugs that came up here. There was just a lot of them. So lots of slugs this year. But the green beans were ready to pick. I had quite a few. This was the first year I tried planting them late, or later than I normally do, and they did great. I think I'll do it again next year. They had enough time to produce quite a bit this year. After I picked them, I had a nice big bowl full of them, and I decided to just blanch them in hot water until they turn bright green, and then you cool them off and freeze them, and they're ready to go. Super easy.
This one looked orange until I got
We were beginning of October. We were supposed to get down to the freezing mark, so we went and picked all of the pumpkins that were nice and orange, and I picked the popcorn that I had drying still on the stalks because we didn't want to lose our pumpkins. But it is starting to get cold, and I knew they were going to get frost soon. So you can see our corn is pretty dry, and I just was going through and picking out the popcorn cobs. These ones aren't very big. I forgot the name of what variety they are, but they produced really well, and they look really nice. We planted a couple different varieties of popcorn this year just to try them out, and this is one of the varieties that did really well for us. So there's lots of pumpkins that we got this year from our little patch. Then October 10th, I did a quick walkthrough of the garden and harvested some stuff. We had some light frosts, so you can see the carrots weren't even fazed by it. They were completely fine. The green beans here got a little crunchy on some of the leaves with some of the frost. They don't care for such cold weather. But I was hoping that they would finish growing some of the beans that they still had on them. So there were still quite a few beans on there to hopefully harvest. And I did harvest quite a few after this too. The cabbage wasn't bothered by it. The bok choy here that was being eaten by slugs was starting to look a little better as I was trying to keep all those slugs out, but lots of holes still in all those old leaves. Then there was just a random Chinese cabbage that came up over here for some reason. The bugs were liking it too, but I was going to harvest the middle of that. And the potatoes had finally started to die down with the frost. So on the other side here is the tomatoes, and lesson learned here, the twine did not hold up the plants. They came crashing down a little while before this, and as I was trying to pick them up, the branches were breaking and stuff, so I just left them down, which made it hard for them to get all the sunshine and start turning red, unfortunately. So lesson learned there this year. But the squash vines, you can see they do not like the cold at all, so they were dying off fast. This was a spaghetti squash vine. There's carrots though that weren't even bothered by it. So you can see one of the spaghetti squash down here that was still on the vine. But those vines do not like the cold at all. Over here was the yellow squash, and we didn't get much yellow squash off of this plant. It just wasn't producing a whole lot, and it really didn't like the cold either. You can see from the crunchy leaves and all that. My broccoli plants weren't really producing broccoli. They had all these spindly tops, but weren't making broccoli heads. So I was gonna just chop off all of these tops and see if they would start going again. And then I realized there was a bunch of cabbage worms on these stalks here. I hadn't been spraying with my Captain Jacks like I had been in the summer, and I had a breakout of cabbage worms all over my broccoli plants. So I needed to take care of those too. It's probably why the plants weren't producing. But here's another part of the squash vine that was dying off. And then in the kids' garden, it was all gone because it was cucumber plants and pumpkin plants and watermelon plants, and none of those can handle the cold like that. So there's just some pepper plants that were looking pretty sad that were left over here. So lots of cabbage worms, unfortunately, but we had a nice harvest and enjoyed that from the garden. Then the 12th, we were supposed to get a really good freeze, so I went and picked all the rest of the pumpkins that were still there, and I'm glad I did because it really did get very cold. The 24th, it was nice, but we were supposed to get some real freeze, so I decided to just take out all the plants. It's time to be done for the season, and I pulled the broccoli plants there, and all the onions and everything else that was over here, and then some hornets decided to come out and were all over the plants I was trying to take out. So decided to leave those and went and did the tomatoes that were definitely done with the really cold weather. And as I was cleaning up the tomatoes that were down there, I found this like slug city on the ground. They were underneath these plants, and it was just covered in all of these slugs. So definitely good to clean up the garden in the fall so I could get rid of all of these pest problems. So I just took one of the kids' shovels and started scooping them up to get them out of the garden and hopefully break that pest cycle and not have so much problems for next year. Because there was definitely a lot of them this year. And it's a lesson learned again that I need to keep up with my sprays and things like that here in the fall, not let the pests get going. So the next day I came out and finished because the hornets weren't out there bothering anything because it was a lot colder that day. And I pulled out the rest of the carrots, and there was some other things that were starting to grow in here. I was surprised at how hard the ground was already. But the daikon radish that I had in the spring was regrowing. And these are the purple carrots. This is the second year I've tried growing them, and they get eaten on the tops by pests. I don't know if I need to be better at pest management or if they're just going to be magnets like that, because my orange carrots grow really nice. So I don't know if I'm going to keep growing those or not. But I know they're healthy for you. So anyway, this is what the bed is. I had thrown some compost down, and here it is, ready for fall. I started working on the other bed, This is the potato side, and again, the ground was pretty hard already, and I was surprised. So it was hard to get the potatoes out, unfortunately, and I kept stabbing them with the shovel, which I didn't want to be doing, but had quite a few potatoes on this side, which I like seeing because these are potatoes that I had stored last year and just put out in the spring, and they produced pretty well, just growing like that. After I got everything out of this bed, it was pretty bare. The other side with all of the carrots that were like just volunteer carrots, I had a lot of carrots, which was pretty fun to see. And I hope they're really good for this fall. Looking forward to eating those. So lots of lessons learned this year, and yeah, it got really cold really fast. So now we're going to be doing lots of preserving and getting ready for next year. So watch for videos on that. Thanks for watching.